Nobody is thinking about you, like, at all. And I know that sounds brutal, but stay with me for a second, because that one sentence, it might be the most freeing thing you hear all year. See, we've been walking around thinking we're the main character in everyone else's story too, that people are replaying our moments, judging our choices, mentally filing away every awkward thing we've ever said. They're not. And once that actually clicks, not just in your head, but like in your chest, everything shifts. Okay, so real talk. You spent, what, 45 minutes picking an outfit this morning? You rehearsed what you were going to say before walking into a room, and at 2 in the morning, 3 days after some random comment you made, you were lying in bed, blanket over your face, cringing so hard you could have melted into the mattress. I've been there. Honestly, I've been deep in there. And the whole time, both of us were convinced, absolutely certain, that other people were watching, judging, keeping score. They weren't. Now, I'm not saying this in that dismissive, toxic positivity way. You know the type. Just stop caring what people think. Cool. Thanks. Fixed. No, that's not what this is. What I'm actually saying is that you've been performing, like full-on, rehearsed, lights-up performing on a stage that only exists inside your own head. And the moment you really see that, you get to put the script down. That's not invisibility. That's not loneliness. That's freedom. So let's get into why this happens, because there's real psychology behind this, and understanding it is what actually makes it stick. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about is something called the spotlight effect. Two researchers, Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky, ran this study where they made participants wear an embarrassing t-shirt. We're talking a giant Barry Manilow face printed on the front. Classic. They had these poor people walk into a room full of strangers, and then afterward ask them, "How many people do you think noticed your shirt?" The participants guessed around half the room. The actual number? Less than a quarter. They were off by almost double. Crazy, right? We genuinely believe we're standing under this blazing spotlight, that every eye in the room has clocked our awkward entrance or our weird laugh or that thing we said. And in reality, most people barely looked up from their own thoughts. I used to be obsessed with the way I laughed in group settings. Was it too loud? Did it come at the wrong moment? Did it sound fake? I'd go home and just sit with it. Then one day I asked a friend what they actually remembered about me from a party we'd both been at. She goes, "I remember you had that really good conversation about travel." That's it. Not the laugh, not the awkward thing I said near the chips bowl, just the travel conversation. All that mental energy, all that replaying and cringing and editing, completely invisible to the one person I was worried about. Here's the thing though, and this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Your brain isn't doing this to torture you, it's actually just doing its job. Psychology shows that humans are hardwired for something called self-referential processing. Basically, your brain naturally puts you at the center of your own experience. There's even a specific part of your brain for it, the medial prefrontal cortex, and it is one of the most active regions in the entire human mind. You're literally neurologically designed to think about yourself more than anything else. So here's the logic. Follow this with me. If your brain is mostly thinking about you, and their brain is mostly thinking about them, then how much mental space is actually left over to spend analyzing you specifically? Almost none. Everyone is the main character of their own movie, and you're a 2-second background extra in most of them. I know that sounds harsh, but honestly, it's a relief. There was a woman, let's call her Maria, who went years without speaking up in work meetings. Years. She was convinced her colleagues already thought she was underqualified, and that every time she opened her mouth, she was just confirming it. Then, one day, she got coffee with a coworker and finally said it out loud. And her coworker just looked confused, like genuinely baffled. She said, "Honestly, I'm usually just in my head about whether I explained my part clearly enough." Maria's whole internal drama, the years of silence, the carefully calculated invisibility, it was a theater production running in an empty house. Nobody had bought a ticket, nobody was even in the building. And I think a lot of us are doing the same thing, holding back, staying quiet, editing ourselves in real time for an audience that clocked out before we even showed up. Okay, here's the next one, and this one wrecked me a little when I first heard it. It's called the illusion of transparency. It's the belief that what's happening inside you, the nerves, the panic, the "I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing" energy, is somehow visible on the outside. Like you think it's written across your forehead in bright red letters. When you're nervous, you're sure everyone can see it. When you're embarrassed, you feel like your face is basically a live broadcast. When you're in a room full of people who all seem to have it together and you're definitely faking it, you assume that fact is glowing off you. It's not. Research shows we dramatically overestimate how much of our inner world actually leaks out. The racing heart, the dry mouth, the "please don't call on me" energy. It feels enormous from the inside. It registers as almost nothing from the outside. I've done presentations where I was 100% sure I looked like a deer in the headlights, full panic mode, visible shaking, the works. And then someone walks up to me and goes, "You seemed so comfortable up there." And I want to grab them by the shoulders and say, "Were you watching the same presentation?" But no, the research is clear. We are way more opaque to other people than we think, which means you have more permission than you've been giving yourself. Permission to try things before you're ready, permission to speak up when you're uncertain, permission to just show up, imperfect, nervous, human. Because that excruciating thing you're feeling inside, nobody out there can even see it. Now, here's the one that really hits different. When people do think about you, and sometimes they do, sure, it's almost never as harsh or as lasting as you imagine. Like you picture them replaying your mistake on a loop, shaking their heads, telling people. In reality, they thought about it maybe 30 seconds, and then they moved on to figuring out what to make for dinner. There's actually a name for this gap. It's sometimes called rumination asymmetry. The idea that we sit with our own perceived failures way longer and way harder than any outside observer ever does. The person who watched you stumble over your words, they forgot about it before they got to the parking lot. You're still rewriting the conversation 4 days later, coming up with better lines, imagining alternate endings like it's a Netflix series you can control. This isn't a flaw, it's just a very human thing. But recognizing it, that's where the shift starts. Because once you get it, once you really get it that your blooper reel only runs in your own head, you can start treating yourself the way other people are already treating you, with grace, with a little, "Yeah, that happened, moving on." And look, here's where all of this lands. If the audience is mostly imaginary, then the performance can stop. And when the performance stops, something real gets to begin. When you stop dressing for the judgment, you dress for yourself. When you stop speaking to dodge criticism, you speak to actually connect. When you stop editing your personality in real time for people who aren't even watching that closely, you start actually living, not performing, living. Research on authenticity backs this up hardcore. People who feel free to just be themselves, genuinely, messily, imperfectly themselves, they report higher well-being, deeper relationships, and way more resilience when things get hard. Not because they stopped caring about people, but because they stopped putting on a show for them and started actually being with them. So here's where I want to leave you. You're not on trial. You never were. That courtroom you've been sitting in with the imaginary jury and the endless replays, you built that room, which means you can walk right out of it. Nobody is thinking about you the way you think they are. And that means the version of yourself you've been waiting to become, the one that feels ready enough, free enough, confident enough, that version doesn't need anyone's permission. It never did. The you that laughs too loud, the you that tries things before being ready, the you that says the wrong thing sometimes and keeps going anyway, that's not the liability. That's the most real thing about you. And real things are what people actually remember. You've had more room than you've thought all along. It's time to take it. If this hit something in you, if it named something you've been carrying around but couldn't quite put into words, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe, because every week we come back to these quiet truths about why you are the way you are. And every week, I think you'll find there's just a little more room to breathe than you realized.